is Rafi Cruzon, and you are tuned in to Nothing But That Sports Talk. Welcome to another episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafi Cruzon alongside Calvin Wetzel from Her Who Stats. And there's a lot of Her Who Stats going on this past week from the first 2 days of WNBA second half to the All-Star break. Welcome aboard, Calvin.
Hey, Rafiq, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, before we get into all the action that happened recently, why don't you talk to me a little bit about how you got started as a freelance journalist, starting from your days at Iowa State?
Yeah, well, so it's Illinois State. You can see,
Illinois State, correction.
yeah, no problem. I got some stuff hanging up in the background if for people who are watching here, but I live like 5 minutes from campus. I walk to the arena all the time for games, so I love Illinois State women's basketball. But yeah, in terms of getting started in journalism, just I saw a tweet is what it was from her hoop stats that you mentioned probably 4 or 5 years ago. That was basically, at the time, it was volunteer. They didn't have money to pay anybody. That they have a little bit now, but it was hey, we're looking for volunteers to do, whatever, this and that, like write articles and work with data and podcasts and different types of opportunities for coverage. So I got started with them, just reached out and joined the team. And then that eventually sort of ballooned, I guess you could say, and led to kind of some other freelance opportunities with different outlets. And it's taken off a lot more than I realized it ever would. But I love it. It's been a really fun journey, and I love being able to just be around the game and meet the amazing people in women's basketball. So it's come a long way, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, when you look, that's amazing. I mean, that's just kind of like, I covered covered WNBA on my own for nothing but it's supposed to for like the past 3 4 years now. Now I'm thinking like back in 2020 during the bubble. So I gotta say, you're doing a good job with what you're doing. I mean, I've seen some work that Herm Staff put together. I've seen, I've also seen a lot of phenomenal WNBA media talents that contributed to this platform. Like, what can you tell the people about what Her Hoop Stats is all about?
Yeah, so it still has stats in the name. It's obviously a big part of what the website is. But how it started was basically all stats, just a stats website. And at some point, our founder Aaron Barzilai just realized, hey, we could expand and start, becoming more of a coverage platform. So we could have podcasts, interview players and coaches. We could have articles, some of which are statsy, some of which are not, some of which are human interest features, whatever the case. We could have like video breakdowns. We could do all this type of different coverage. So sort of expanded, and really kind of has a foothold in a lot of different areas at this point, but obviously still sort of the main website. If you go to herhoopstats.com, it's going to be lots and lots of stats and numbers. And that's always going to be sort of the biggest identity. But there's a lot going on now, just trying to cover the game however we can.
That's what it's all about. I mean, when you cover it with WNBA, like what is what how do you approach the WNBA coverage when actually interviewing the players and discussing it?
Yeah, that's it kind of evolved, because when I first started, I was really nervous. Not that I don't get nervous anymore, but I was always like, when I was interviewing a player or coach, like I did not approach it very well because I was just like really nervous, kind of starstruck. Like the first person I ever interviewed was Nafisa Collier after the game, where she had her first ever double double, and Sylvia Fowles had her record breaking double double. And I'm sure she doesn't remember it, but I was wicked awkward. Like probably the first like 10 interviews I did with anyone were so awkward, but I've gotten to a point where I can sort of approach it a little bit differently, in the sense that like I'm a little bit more confident in myself now to be able to just kind of prepare and know what questions to ask, and make it feel a little bit more comfortable. So I really just want to, if I am interviewing someone for whatever, it's a podcast, article, anything, just like be able to listen and kind of tell their story, because obviously these players and coaches have amazing stories to tell, and sometimes like I'm the one privileged enough to tell it. So I just want to make sure that I get a good feel for their story and who they are, so I can sort of convey that to readers if it's an article or whatever that is.
And that's a good part because you know there are a lot of information about these WNBA athletes out there. There are going to be some stories that not many people in the public know about that you don't even hear them talk about enough until it actually gets leaked by somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You know, it doesn't get covered like the NBA does, obviously. We all know that. So there's you know, you if something happens with LeBron James, like you're gonna hear about it, you know, you'll hear about what he ate for breakfast or whatever, which is cool. LeBron's great, but we don't always hear those same stories in the W, and it's really important to tell them because I think that's what develops a fan base is you sort of get to know the players as players and as people, and you develop those connections. You sort of start relating to them, and then you become a fan. You follow their career. I think we can all relate to that in a lot of different sports, men's and women's. So, just being able to tell those stories is crucial.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of relate to that. And of course, you got to approach it like, even though they are mainstream basketball players, they're also human beings just like me and you. So, if I mean, for future interviews, you should try to approach a WNBA interview the way you would approach talking to them, just to have a regular conversation. I mean, at the end of the day, the only difference is you're interviewing them with either audio recorder or camera, or right, you're staring at you, or in a microphone. That's the only difference. The conversation is being recorded compared to actually being off the camera.
Yeah, I think that's what has helped me a lot. You know, as I've kind of grown in that area, is just to sort of treat it like a conversation, just not really think about the fact that it's on camera, recorded or whatever. Just sort of be myself and just ask questions like in a regular conversation. I'm gonna ask questions and try to get to know you, and just if I can take that same approach, then I think that's good.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's all about. But let me ask this, but to continue the conversation, I mean, as you see, what are your overall impressions about the way the WNBA has evolved, even through the difficult years of the COVID pandemic and the limited amount of fans they've had in 2021 up until this point?
It's been great. I mean, it obviously came through the pandemic and is a stronger league now in terms of audience and viewership, and it's been going nowhere but up, and that's I think only going to continue as we get into next year and we get the new TV rights deal or the media rights deal for college too, for college women's basketball and in the WNBA. Both should be kind of getting a pretty big bag coming up in the next year. So I think you're only going to see more and more coverage and more viewers, more and more fans, and it's in a really great spot right now.
Exactly, and it's all a matter of of our mindset towards covering the WNBA. You trying to make sure that the conversations you don't really see much on TV, you have it here in platforms like this. Like seriously.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what you have here obviously is a great platform to get some of that coverage out there and be able to interview people. So really cool stuff that you're doing too, Rafiq.
I appreciate the compliment. Now, to continue the conversation, 2023 has been a big year. You got Angel Reese leading LSU to the national championship. You got the super team, the Aces, and the Liberty. But this past week, we had to learn. I mean, we had to learn the hard way. This past week, in the first few months, we had to learn the hard way that it's not all about the Liberty and the Aces super teams. What do you think about women's basketball in 2023 up until this point, both the college and the pros?
Well, like I said, the sport in college and pros is in a great spot. And, and you mentioned like Angel Reese and LSU, and you saw like the viewership was through the roof for that game between LSU and Iowa, and really the whole Final Four, Iowa, South Carolina. Just a great product that's being put on display. And then in the WNBA, when you talk about the super teams that you talked about, the Liberty been kind of disappointing in terms of super team standards. They still have time to figure it out. The Aces have been historically dominant. They could go down as the best team ever. They'll have to prove it for the second half of the season as well. But there's just a lot going on, and there's so many cool storylines, and it's good basketball. Like if you watch a Las Vegas Aces game, it's legitimately fun, entertaining basketball. And I think more and more people are realizing that.
Exactly, and it's also a good case for you to do a little bit of sports betting because I've seen you've been on Daniel's Bet the W podcast several times or a couple times already. Like, why don't you reflect on that experience of being able to talk basketball and integrate sports betting into it?
Yeah, well, Danielle's great. I have a ton of respect for her, so I'm always honored to be on that podcast. And just in general to talk about betting because, like I said, like working with her hoop stats and going back to college, like I was a math major, so I've always been like a basketball junkie and a numbers nerd, and kind of put those together with the analytics side, which doesn't have to be betting, but it can be. Betting is a big way to use sort of the data and analytics side of things in any sport. And so I've sort of figured out that that's kind of my lane where I'm good at. And it took me, like, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now. And I wasn't, the first couple of years, I didn't do anything with betting at all. I wasn't even familiar with it. It took me a while to sort of find that groove and figure out where I can really like make my mark. And I love doing all these different types of coverage, but I think betting is something that it draws on my strengths and what I'm comfortable with in terms of analyzing numbers. And it's also, this is the key, another great way to draw fans in, because what happens with betting is you get people who want to bet on something, any sport, and they don't follow that sport, but they want to bet on it. So you get them to bet on the WNBA. And once you have a bet on the WNBA, you're going to watch the game because you want to watch and see if your bet won or lost. So now people who have never watched the WNBA before are going to watch the WNBA because I told them to place such and such a bet and, hopefully make a little bit of money in the process. But that's sort of secondary to me. I think getting people in the door and getting people hooked. And I've had so many people tell me that that's been the case for them. That's sort of like the number one goal of it.
Exactly. And since we're on the subject of talking about sports betting, because it's time to match my sports betting skills to this episode, Nothing But That Sports Talk. And I was kind of encouraged because when I told Danielle about being on the show, she had to change her mind at the very last minute and talk about she might not to talk about it might not be a good fit for the show, but it's whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry to hear that, but
Yeah, but whatever. It's a whatever. I'll have a conversation with her about that. That was between me and Daniel. But while we're on the subject, we can just talk about the games that's going on tonight. I mean, obviously earlier the Atlanta Dream we finally took another loss against the Connecticut Sun, ending what was a 7-game winning streak. But David's the sleeper team up until this point. But even with but before we get to East Bend stats tonight's game, which won't be talked about until the very next episode, why don't you talk about your overall impression about the Atlanta Dreams winning streak?
yeah, from a betting perspective, I was betting on them kind of throughout that whole streak, and I bet on them today too. So I finally lost one, but they were very good to me for 2+ weeks there. Obviously, they had a little bit of a softer schedule there, but I think the key was Ryan Howard. You saw Ryan Howard sort of step up and go from good player to really elite scorer, at least for that 2-week stretch. And she's had inconsistencies throughout her short career. So we might see some more struggles and then some more hot streaks again. But when she is on, I think you see what this dream team can be and what their ceiling is when Ryan Howard is cooking, especially from three and able to stretch the defenses and that, forces tougher closeouts, gets into the paint, finds people. It's been really fun to watch. And in her second year only, we've seen tremendous growth. So I think the dream that, this year we'll see what happens. They're definitely going to be a playoff team, but the future is bright in Atlanta.
Exactly. The Atlanta Dream has never won a championship. Heck, they never won a WNBA Finals game. But obviously, in about a year or two, we're probably going to be talking about them in the finals. But right now, we'll just be happy with the fact that they're making a return to the postseason.
Yeah, definitely. I think baby steps, and they spent 3 or 4 years straight, kind of on the outside looking in of the playoffs. So, including last year, they were in it till the final day, obviously, and got knocked out on that final day of the regular season. So, I think getting into the playoffs is a good step for the franchise and just kind of get the fan base going and use it as a launching pad into 2024.
Exactly. Now, to change your gears real quick, as I already mentioned, with the 3 games going on tonight, we got the Los Angeles Sparks going up against the Minnesota Lynx. I mean, wait. Like, we can you predict like the point total for this score? Because I'm predicting it might be in the 120s or the low 130s. Because those teams, they play good defense. Even with Shanae Ogumik nursing an injury, they still got NECA. You still got Jasmine Thomas, and then you got good other pieces too in Lexi Brown. So what's the total score for that?
Well, the betting line is in the low 160s, which I think that's about right. Lexi Brown, you mentioned, is questionable. So if she comes back, that's really going to help the offense a lot because we saw how well she was shooting the ball earlier in the season before that illness. And also, going back to AU, Athletes Unlimited, earlier in the spring or late winter, she had a phenomenal shooting season there. And that just sort of was a springboard into the WNBA season. So if she can pick up where she left off shooting the ball, I definitely think this game could get into the 160s just in terms of the offense that she provides, and as well as the offense that you're seeing from the Minnesota Lynx. You saw Fee carry the team. Sometimes she doesn't get a lot of help. Sometimes Diamond Miller shows up and gives her sort of a Robin to her Batman. So sort of it depends on what she's going to get from the supporting cast. But Fee has been on one lately. She's been really fun to watch, Nafisa Collier, and I could see both these teams scoring a little bit tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And while sticking with, and as we're on the subject of talking about Fee, like I mean, as far as I think she's probably going to get like a little above 16 points because based on everything you just said, she just has that. She has the mindset to actually get that far. She's a franchise piece now with Sylvia Fowles retired. So yeah, what do you? How much you think she's going to put up today?
Well, they played the Sparks 3 times this year, and she had 24, 25, and 26 in those. So she's been taking the rivalry pretty seriously. I would definitely expect her to be in the 20s again. I don't know if she'll have 35 like she did last game, but I think in the 20s is a good bet, and I hope so because anytime you get those good Nafisa scoring games, it's always really a spectacle, and I'll be watching tonight. So I hope we get that.
Yeah, I hope we get that too. Now going to the Chicago Sky and the Phoenix Mercury. I mean, before the Suns redeemed themselves to defeat the Energy earlier today, they took an L in Phoenix against the Mercury. They won their fifth game. I mean, I'm going to be fair with you. The Mercury, they've been having injuries, so at least they have a good reason to not be so great at the beginning of the year. I mean, Brittany Griner just came back this season. She's just getting readjusted to play in the league. So yeah, what do you think is a point total for this game? Because I'm probably gonna give it like 120 in this one as well. Just because we don't know what type of game we're gonna get for Brittany Griner and Diane Taurasi. We know Kalia Copper, the Chicago Sky's gonna put some serious numbers, but we don't know what we're gonna get from her supporting cast.
Yeah, so this one is going to be a pretty low total, I imagine. I'm with you on that. Well, especially because Diana Taurasi is out for this one, and she's obviously brings some offense and doesn't really bring a lot of defense anymore at this point in her career. So I think that's going to move the total down a little bit as well. I could definitely see this one being below 150. I think both of these teams are going to struggle to score, and these are the two teams in the league that have had coaching changes in the middle of the season this year for very different reasons. And so we've seen sort of an adjustment period as well in that regard. And just some moving parts, like you said, with people in and out of the lineup on both sides. And so I'm not sure if it's going to be your sort of classic aesthetically pleasing basketball game. I never mind any type of basketball game, defensive, offensive, grind it out. Like ball is life. So give me whatever, sign me up for watching basketball. But I do think this one's going to be lower scoring than the Lynx and the Sparks to answer your question about the point total.
Exactly. That's what it's all about. And we get to the numbers that the players probably put up. For me, the Chicago Sky, the player to watch, obviously, is Kalia Copper. Kalia Copper is going to get at least 20 to 25, somewhere around those realms and above.
Yeah, she's been a really bright spot for the Sky, and especially the last couple games, she's been in the 20s, really gone off. And so I could see her dropping 20 plus again on the Mercury, again, who don't have a stellar defense. And that would be fun to see.
Yeah. And while Brittany Griner, she's probably going to get about 20 points and above. I mean, because we know what Brittany Griner could do.
Yeah, well, and Nikki Blue, the new head coach for the Mercury, has been using her a lot more and going to her more, which is good. I think sometimes the Mercury had a tendency to maybe not give the ball to Brittany Griner enough, as dominant as she is in the post. And so if you can just feed her, feed her, feed her, I mean, I think that's your best offense at this point. And she's a capable enough passer to where when you put those shooters around her, when you look at Mariah Jefferson and Shug Sutton and players like that, she can find them as well. So I like to see how involved she's been in the offense since Nikki Blue took over, and I think we'll see that again tonight.
Yes, we do. And on to the very next game, we got the Aces and the Seattle Storm. And yeah, Seattle, they're rebuilding phase. We know how good the Aces could be. But point total for this one, I'm going to take a gamble and go about 140.5. I mean, because even though the Aces did blow the smithereens the last time they went down there at the Climax Pledge Arena, if I'm saying the arena's name right, this has potential. But I think the Seattle Storm could learn from that loss and be at least somewhat competitive. I'm going with 140 and above.
Yeah, well, I think this is going to be the highest scoring game of the night. It's an Aces game. They usually are, and the Storm haven't looked great on defense this year either. So we could see the Aces drop 100. We could see them be in the 90s. I think the first two matchups between these two teams were in the 150s or 160s. But I would be a little bit surprised if this one ends in the 150s again. Maybe in the 160s. I could see again in the 170s. I think the Aces are rested. They didn't practice a couple days after the All-Star break, and obviously they stayed home. They didn't travel for the All-Star game. They traveled for this game, but should have pretty fresh legs. And so this one could get out of hand, and it could be pretty high scoring.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of high scoring, now we get to the play. Now we get to the player perspective. You know, A'ja Wilson is going to have the numbers. She's the current MVP. I got her going 25 and above. What you got?
Yeah, well, it all depends on how long the Storm can stay in the game, right? Because I think A'ja could easily drop 25 or 30, but you could also see a situation where A'ja doesn't play the fourth quarter because the Aces are up by so much. And at that point, you see her scoring tail off a little bit because she doesn't get as many minutes and as many opportunities, which is great for the Aces. I think they would sign up for that any day. So kind of all depends on how the game flow goes. But I definitely think that the Storm will have a tough time stopping her in the paint whenever she's out there.
Yes, exactly. And it all comes down to how much good defense the Seattle Storm can play this time around. Because you know in a rebuilding phase, they're going to have the struggles against an elite team like the Aces, even though they did lose to the Dallas Wings not too long ago. The defense is all about how good the defense can be. And getting on the subject of the players, Jewel Lloyd, I think I got her going for 30. She's probably gonna she has the potential to drop the much. We'll see what she can do in the All-Star break game, but she's literally the face of that franchise now. So yeah.
Yeah, Jewel has been just terrific this season and how she's carried this really young team outside of her and Kia Nurse and Sammy Whitcomb. You're talking about a bunch of rookies, second years, a lot of players who are really, I think, benefiting from that veteran leadership and playing alongside Jewel. And you're also seeing Jewel take advantage of all of those extra opportunities in terms of the scoring after losing Brianna Stewart, Sue Bird, as the Storm did. She's on pace to set the WNBA record for points per game, over 25 a game. Obviously, just won the All-Star Game MVP, excuse me. And my buddy Danny Barlavi, who some listeners may know, did some good research. The All-Star Game MVPs really come out and play strong in their next game following that. So I could see a 30 piece from the Gold Mamba as well, Rafiq.
Yeah, I can see that too. All right, now let's get to continue the conversation of the WNBA basketball talk. Again, Rafiq Luz on Calvin Wetzel. Yeah, last weekend you were at the WNBA All-Star break in Las Vegas. Why don't you talk a little bit about your overall experience and your backstory of being in that environment?
Well, I actually wasn't in Las Vegas this past weekend, unfortunately. I had a lot of friends there. I did get to go the year before in Chicago, and that was really fun. Had a lot of, good memories. Just meeting with people who I haven't met before or met only once or twice. That's kind of what these are all about, right? People who we know on Twitter, who we know through various channels of media, and and whatnot, kind of all congregating in one place and celebrating women's basketball. So that was a fun experience. It was a little bit of a bummer to miss out this year. But hopefully I'll be able to go again in the future and to events like that, to the Final Fours. I've been at the last couple Final Fours because it's always just a good time to see high level basketball up close and to just connect with other amazing people in this women's basketball community.
Yeah, I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to go because I remember when we talked about making this interview happen, you said that's why I saved it to the all. That's why I saved the time to the All-Star break just in case you had time to go. But it's whatever happens. Everything happens for a reason. You got to face all obstacles of life.
That's how it goes. Yeah, sometimes life comes at you, but we'll do what we can.
Yeah, man. While we continue the subject, I mean, what has impressed you the most from watching the All-Star break, from Sabrina Ionescu winning the skills challenge to the ace to Chelsea Gray leading her team to the All-Star skills challenge, so of course Team Stewart blowing Team Asia Wilson the smithereens.
Yeah, well, obviously Sabrina's 3-point contest performance impressed me quite a bit, and Chelsea Gray in the skills challenge. I think, I expected the Aces to win, but I think no shade to Kelsey Plum. I think Chelsea Gray really carried them though, and so that was really fun to watch. And Chelsea Gray is always fun to watch. Great personality, and especially in actual basketball games, I'll say she's just a wizard with the ball in her hands. The passes that she's able to make and what she's able to create for herself and others. So always one of my favorite players to watch. And yeah, very impressive, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. And understand that well, right, with the work that her hoop stat put up, you also had a certain NBC Sports Washington talent named Christy Winter Scott being involved with your platform. Like, why don't you talk a little bit about what she brings to the WNBA media landscape?
Yeah, Christy is great. I've been on a couple podcasts with her through her hoop stats. She does a podcast regularly with Gabe Ibrahim, and
I see
so
her.
everyone should go check it out. That's a fantastic podcast. They do a great job, and I've joined it just once or twice, which is really fun. I always learn a lot from her. Talking to her, she played obviously at Maryland, so she has a lot of experience around the game. She's got a daughter playing now, I believe at Georgetown. I might be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that. But she just is so knowledgeable and a great announcer too. If you listen to Mystics games for the
I've listened to
WNBA,
Mrs. Game. Very nice announcer. And I've listened to her cover some college basketball games. She's beautiful. Very phenomenal.
definitely, and she really knows her stuff. So it's anytime she's on a game, I'm looking forward to listening and learning what I can from her.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that wraps up this episode. Nothing but that sports. So thank you so much for stopping by, Calvin Wetzel. Can't wait to continue talking WNBA basketball with you, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rafik. I appreciate it.
And to all the balls out there, get your head in the game.